Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Bible in Life podcast. My name is John Whitaker. I am the creator of the Bible in Life, and my goal, my heart behind this podcast, the listener's commentary, and everything else is to provide clear, down-to-earth Bible teaching, what I like to call blue jeans theology. That is theology, Bible teaching that's in the language of everyday life, set in the context of everyday life, to help you follow Jesus right in the midst of your everyday life. So that's what we're all about. And if you're a first-time visitor to the podcast, welcome. Super grateful for you. Glad you're here. Pray you find it helpful to you. Last week, we started a short little kind of three-part series where I'm having a conversation with my friend Stephen Norris, who has read through First Peter and just had some thoughts, comments, questions, observations about First Peter. And we kind of reflect on those and discuss those together as we think through how First Peter can help us live as good disciples of Jesus. And part of the reason I think First Peter is such an apropos book for our time period has to do with the backstory to the book, right? Whenever we read a New Testament letter, we're reading a real conversation between either two people or two groups of people. In this case, it's a conversation between the Apostle Peter and a group of churches in what is now modern-day Turkey. And in this episode, Stephen and I's conversation kind of turns to that backstory and what was lying behind the book and what was going on with those churches and some of the hostility and the persecution and the ridicule and the marginalization they were facing because of their faith in Jesus. And so Stephen and I turn to that, reflect on that, and then think through how while our details are different, the message of First Peter speaking into their situation has a lot of wisdom to say to our situation, wisdom about all the division and debates surrounding politics and political issues in my country or maybe your country, other parts of the world. Wisdom about how our faith and our hope should shape what we do today, what we prioritize today, and how we approach our life and our circumstances and our situation and even our relationship to the country we live in today. And so this conversation, or this part of Stephen and I's conversation, really gets into the backstory of First Peter and the difference that our faith and our hope should make in our life today. I hope you find it helpful to you as you seek to learn and live the Bible. So as you read through First Peter, were there, besides that theme of lifestyle evangelism, other themes or questions or specific passage that really jumped out at you?
Yeah, I have a couple kind of just like nuts and bolts questions, like what's your take on this or like stuff like that, but also do we know much about the type of persecution? I mean, it's clear that Peter's writing. I'm guessing this is I didn't dig much into the background. I'm guessing this is a circular letter going around to these different churches or these different areas that he mentioned in the very
Yeah.
first couple verses.
Yep. Yeah. So there's a
Um,
bunch of churches in those areas, and those areas aren't cities; those are all regions. So that those areas all cover the vast majority of central to eastern modern day Turkey. So north,
okay.
south, kind of middle to the eastern half of modern day Turkey is where he's writing to.
Yeah, so a couple questions I had around that was one, do we know maybe not from the letter, but do we know anything about the type of persecution going on there? And then two, I'm guessing this is a fairly or maybe completely Gentile audience or decently
Yeah.
composed of Gentile audience, but there's also there's a lot of Jewish history history and themes all the way weaved all the way through the whole letter,
Yeah.
which I find interesting if this is a letter written to Gentiles.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on the persecution theme, I think one of the things, uh, just for making sure we understand how like our Bible, we got to do Bible study. The first thing I literally just talked about this 2 days ago in class at the college in basic Bible study class, where how do you figure out the situation behind a New Testament letter or a biblical document? Because they're all
Hmm.
situational and occasional documents, right? Well, the first thing you do is you just read through the whole letter, preferably in one sitting. So you would sit down and read First Peter. It would take you about 20, 25 minutes to read through the whole thing with an eye towards what's said in the letter,
Hmm.
that would tip you off to the situation. Just like if you're sitting in the living room at home and your wife gets a phone call and you hear her side of the phone conversation, we've all done this, and you're trying to figure out who she's talking to and what's going on, right?
Yep. Yep.
It's the same thing. You're reading one side of the conversation, Peter's side of the conversation, and you're going to listen closely to it and try to figure out who's he talking to and what's going on. Um, and so as you read through First Peter, you do hear clearly there's persecution, there's opposition of various kinds. Um, what it seems like from reading the letter, and then when you look at kind of the time period in history that it probably was written, what it seems like is not so much like outright like killing of Christians and all of that. Maybe some imprisonment, maybe there might be some of that, but when you read through the letter, it doesn't sound like we're to that point yet. That's why I feel like it's a good letter for our time, because what's more going on from what we can tell in the letter is a lot of, like, to use a technical phrase, social dislocation, right? Like they're just being misplaced. They don't fit in their cities anymore. They're being looked on with suspicion and laughed at as weird. That kind of stuff is what seems to
Right.
be going on. Um, in in the Greco-Roman world of the day, that if you, uh, to use your example, if you were an X-ray tech, say they had X-ray techs back in their day, whatever
Hmm.
trade you worked in, right, every skill job you had, you would be part of a collaborative network of other people that were in the same basic field, and you would all
Sure.
have a trade guild that you had all formed together, and you were all in it. And that was sort of like your life insurance and your health insurance, and they would be the ones that helped put your funeral on, and they would do all that sort of stuff. And they would all have their patron deity, their patron god or goddess. You'd get together for meals, maybe once a month with the trade guild. It was a big social club. You have a great time, but there'd be a sacrifice, maybe even a hymn to their god and all that sort of stuff. Well, if you're a Christian, I don't know if I can go to the trade guild meetings anymore, because those are all my closest friends, and they're the ones that I've invested my life in and given money to, and they're the ones that are supposed to take care of me when, if anything bad happens to my family, they're my insurance and all that. And now you lose all of that because you won't participate you're not honoring the patron god or goddess and whatever else it is. So you've got that going on. So it's just a lot of uh, economic and social and business and communal neighbors. And now, in a highly communal society where all of a sudden now your house is marked as that's the Christian house.
Hmm.
And now you're looked on with suspicion because you're a threat to the stability of the empire, because you won't proclaim, Kaiser Kyrios, Caesar is Lord, all that sort of stuff. um,
Yeah.
Sets you off, and now you lose business. Your job is suffering. How are you going to pay the bills? How are you going to put food on the table? And all sorts of stuff. That's what I think is going on primarily behind the letter of First Peter for these churches. Is they're experiencing that kind of hostility, suspicion, mistreatment, and social
Yeah.
dislocation because of their faith in Jesus.
Yeah. That was my inference from just the tone of the letter, because it
Yeah,
does, it feels very much like this is how you, like, yeah, this is what you're dealing with and this is how you live with it.
yeah, yeah. No, exactly. And I don't think we've gotten maybe to the same degree that the Peter's original audience has, but in Western society, Christians are increasingly looked at as odd, weird, dangerous. Like, if you don't agree to, this social platform, this ideological platform, you're a threat to society. You're a danger. You're a nemesis, right? I think
Yeah.
Christians are increasingly looked at that way in Western civilization, Western countries like America or European countries or whatever else it is. And we need to listen to First Peter and say, well, so how do you live in that situation?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that kept coming to my mind over and over again
Yeah,
because, I mean, especially just where we're at in the first quarter of 2025 is, um, politically speaking, there's essentially a war going on.
yeah. Well,
And
and one of the sad things I see in our society, not to get into too much social commentary or anything, but one of the sad things I see is Christians have different convictions about some of the things going on politically and societally, and they're
Mhm.
picking each other apart on social media and writing against each other and lobbing, hand grenades, verbal hand grenades at each other and calling each other names. And I just like, we're just dragging the name of Jesus through the mud. And
Yeah.
I wish we could find a better way. And I think Peter has some good advice for us. But
Yeah, absolutely. What's another theme that I wrote down that was really wove throughout was this the idea of suffering, deepening your faith, making it more genuine,
hmm
um, and also just like the value of having a faith
yeah,
is, um,
say
I
that
feel like
again. The value of
chapters
having
one and two,
a faith.
the value of having faith.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
Um, like he mentions that your faith is more valuable than gold, gold, even though it's refined by fire, still perishes, but your faith doesn't. Like he he spent some time elevating just the value of having faith
yeah,
at
yeah.
all. He puts a really high value on that, which is,
No, and that's I think a really important observation in just that passage you just read. Yeah, he's reminding them of what, okay, your faith is all these other things may be happening, right? Pressure on the job front, pressure on the home front, pressure on the neighborhood front. All these things may be happening. And it just feels really awful. And you're wondering what's really worthwhile. Peter wants to say, your faith is the most worthwhile, the most valuable, precious thing you have. So if anything's got to go, don't let it be that, right? Because
right.
it's more precious than gold.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's what gives you the living hope, the ability to deal with all the chaos around you and the oppression or, you know, socioeconomic, ostracizing or whatever it is, however, I guess we don't know exactly how it looked, but
Yeah,
um, to deal with all that and deal with even submitting to, your spouse who isn't a believer, which would be really difficult, um, that idea of doing it all for Christ and for the hope that you have in the future. Um, that's what gets you through. That's the
yeah,
anchor,
yeah. Did
which I
you
think
go ahead?
kind of key verse maybe in that, um, First Peter 1:13. Set your hope fully on the grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ,
hmm
which is kind of like this could be your whole life of dealing with this frustration, but your hope isn't in that, it's beyond that.
Yeah,
But it also starts now.
yeah. And I think that's good because it reminds us that you don't have some fairy tale wish for a silver lining that's going to happen someday in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years because it may not. The silver lining may not come until the world to come, right? Until you're in glory.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like Peter does a good job of kind of balancing, um, like your actions could show people and win people over. Um, I feel like he does a good job of balancing like this could happen in a positive way, or like there's also a reality that we can't ignore that maybe nothing will ever come from it. And
Yeah.
it'll all, you'll be rewarded in heaven.
Right.
And I feel like he does a good job of balancing the here and the future. Um, I feel like that was a kind of a theme too, where he goes back and forth between talking about, post death, post resurrection type talk, and also living in the here and now.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel like as you read through First Peter, looking or thinking about that theme, that there were like two or three things that were like, okay, if I want to suffer well as a Christian, here are some things that I need to bear in mind or things that I need to begin to practice, things I need to do in order to suffer well? Did you anything like that jump out at you as you read through it?
Um, well, I think honestly, what's in my current context, what stepped out to me or stood out to me more was um, the always being ready to share,
Mm-hmm.
which depending on the situation and who it is, you might share different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also just the boldness to share when taking the opportunities when they come up, because a lot of this letter is like talking about earning the ability to speak into someone's life through your actions. Like your actions
Mm-hmm.
might be your ticket into the opportunity to speak to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that you have something to say when the
Yeah.
opportunity comes along, and that you take the opportunity when it's there.
Yeah.
Um, so I think those um, were big for me, but also just not getting caught up in the drama and the chaos of. I mean, right now it's all politics. Like everyone is so stirred up one way or another by politics, but being educated about it, but also not being swayed by it, and your life being steered by it,
Right.
I think I think
Right.
shows a lot too.
Yeah. Your hope, because your hope is fixed fully on the grace to be real when Jesus returns. Your hope isn't in,
Yeah.
you know, what happens in America, what happens in the world presently. Your hope isn't in the who's in office and who's not in office or anything else, right? Like your hope is in Jesus, fully and
Hmm.
completely, and in the world to come. So that should at least allow you to not be totally indifferent, because bad politics do harm people, but
Yeah.
to not be so easily stirred up by it, to not be consumed by it. There are people I know, people I love, who I hop on social media in the morning and look at Facebook, and I hop on social media later in the afternoon, maybe look at it again. Maybe one other time I might hop on and look at it a little bit later in the day. It's like they've already posted like five or six different political posts,
Yeah.
every single day, at least, maybe more. And I'm like, wow. Like, I
Yeah.
just it's like we're consumed by it. And as you're saying, like, okay, we who are followers of Jesus, who have our hope in another place, we can pray about it, we can care about it, be educated about it, because we know bad politics hurt people, but we're not consumed by it. We're not angry about it. We're not all stirred up about it, because that's not where our hope or our faith lies.
Yeah. And I think there's a really Christ-like way to be engaged. Um, I'm not talking about engage at the level where you're going to become a politician so that you can have, not that kind
Yeah.
of level of engagement, just, but how to interact with peers and coworkers and family members and just some of those people who are really heavily uh, and emotionally wrapped up in politics.
So,
I
yeah,
think there's,
could you describe that the Christ-like way? Do you feel like, what does it look like a little bit?
well, I mean, one I think is knowing, being partly educated is obviously very helpful.
Hmm.
So you're aware of the conflicts and the sides and the opinions and all that. Um, but not, like, if you turn on the news, you can watch, left side or right side and get the same stories, but just they're totally trashing the other side.
Yeah,
There's no conversations happening.
yeah,
It's very mudslinging, trash talking, name calling. Like it just descends into like sinful banter. I feel
yeah,
like where you're not valuing people as people anymore just because they believe something different.
yeah,
And that is so the opposite of that. Like
yeah,
still being willing to have dialogue, being willing to listen, hear people out, and no matter what they say, they're still a fellow human that God loves and that uh, you should love, and that you're not gonna stoop to dragging them through the mud and name calling and giving them writing them off completely because he found out that they voted a certain way or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Super
That's
surface
good.
level, but it's like that does
I
not
think it's
happen.
helpful. It's helpful for us to think that stuff through and to be reminded, okay, my first loyalty is Jesus. So how can I act in a way that is like Jesus and honors Jesus in these kind of conversations or these situations?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Bible and Life podcast and this conversation between my friend Stephen and I. The Bible and Life is only possible because of the generosity of dozens and dozens of people who support this podcast, the listener's commentary, and the entire online ministry. So thanks a ton for your support. And if you want to join the team of supporters, you can go to johnwhitaker.net. Click the Give button. It'll redirect you to a page, my page at World Family Mission, where you can set up a one-time or a recurring monthly donation. Thanks a ton for your support, and I pray that this conversation was helpful to you as you seek to learn and live the Bible. I look forward to talking with you again next week.